This should be an absolute blast here. We have Jonathan White. He'll be your Doomsday player against Jacob Wilson. Oh my God, he's not playing Rug. Whoa.
He's mixing it up.
Yeah, he's playing blue white red with like a little bit of changes from Owen's deck list. Blue red. I mean, he's always playing Delver, of course, but he's normally playing Rug. So I'm actually really surprised to see him not doing that. He won with Rug in Seattle. But hey, you got the Doomsday list, and you're the Doomsday expert. So yeah, go ahead and tell us all about it.
So a lot of this deck is trying to set up the same thing. There's a couple cards we're going to want to bring up on the screen here. First of all is Doomsday itself. This is a card that allows you to basically set your library to any 5 cards that you would want. He has a couple single. He can actually just set up a conventional storm kill this way. He also has a couple singletons in this list, including Ideas Unbound and Reign of Filth, which I presume allow him to all go off in one shot, though I actually don't know either of those cards off the top of my head. But most Doomsday lists have a basically set 5 cards that they're trying to get to. They can use Sensei's Divining Top to also manipulate those cards and draw as appropriate. And then there's some singletons that allow usually for a kill in a single turn.
So you're telling me that you don't know what Reign of Filth does?
I don't know.
You don't know really? You don't know Reign of Filth? I'm waiting for it to be brought up.
Oh, is
you
that
don't
the-
know what Reign of Filth does? I don't know what it does either. I think this is their win condition, right?
I would assume so.
Ooh, okay. So each land you control gains sacrifice this land.
All right, so it's a
and
mana.
on. Okay.
It's a mana sink. This allows him to. He can Burning Wish for. I guess he can still. Through this, he can Burning Wish for his copy of Time Spiral if he has a ton of mana. I mean, there's just or tendrils to kill in a single turn. So a lot of this is just setting up sufficient mana to be able to kill through Burning Wish in a single turn and use Sensei's Divining Top numerous times.
You see a True Nemesis here from Wilson, as we'll catch you guys up on the game state here. He's got 2 Tundras, a Volcanic Island, sacrifice the Sculling Turn. That's why he's at 19. True Nemesis is in play. Jonathan White has a couple basics, a top in play, sacrifice a couple fetch lands. He's sitting at 18. However, all kidding aside, with Doomsday, is an incredibly complicated deck, and it is not a deck that people just pick up and play. So when I find out that someone's playing Doomsday to tournament, I'm never surprised to see a Doomsday player have a good record.
Right.
He's sitting at 4-0. And yes, he's playing against one of the up-and-coming Magic players in the world, in Jacob Wilson, who's also sitting at 4-0, unsurprisingly. But I would not be surprised to see Jonathan might be very, very good at playing this deck because, I mean, you're not 4-0 in accident with Doomsday as like a Taxian Probe is going to get cast.
Yeah, I thought Reign of Filth for a second was the high tide for swamps, but that's
Okay.
that's bubbling
Bubbling
mud.
Muck. Okay, gotcha. As we were being told by MTG Kobe that it's basically Dark Ritual number 5 for the Doomsday deck.
Sure.
So we see the Gataxian Probe reveal a couple Force of Will, Spell Pierce, Swords. Some nice cards there in Wilson's hand. Looks like Jacob's consulting possibly some notes here, life total of the cards that he wrote down. Wondering if how he's going to make his way through this permission. Because right now, True Nemesis is the clock.
Yep. There's also one copy of Ideas Unbound, which I believe is the draw 3 and then discard 4 and a turn. And that plus Divining Top or another cantrip allows him to draw all 5 cards that he sets with Doomsday.
All right, so Cabal Therapy shows up, and ideally that's going to name Force of Will, so Wilson is going to have to probably Force of Will this, removing a blue card, so he can hang on to his other Force of Will. But this is where things do get a little bit interesting, because he has double Force, Spell Pierce, and I believe he has the Swords, I think, a True Name Nemesis. I think True Name Nemesis is the card that he is going to remove to this first Force. Yep, that's exactly what he's going to do. So Wilson's going to go down to 18. Cabal Therapy gets countered, for lack of a better term. I mean, it did its job.
Right.
Here's Volcanic Island. Pass a turn back. The interesting thing about this combo deck is that top is really integral to making it work.
Yes.
Yeah. So you attack there with the Nemesis. And you see a Spell Pierce, and Ponder was actually the card drawn here for Wilson, so he's going to start by doing that in the second main phase. A Meddling Mage, a Spell Pierce, and a Stoneforge Mystic. This is going to be kind of funny to me because I'm not sure if Jacob knows what he's playing against. I'm not sure how familiar he is actually with Doomsday. Yes, he has had a lot of success in Legacy over his career, but Doomsday is a deck that does not see a lot of play. So if he is to keep Meddling Mage, what does he name? Does he even know that he's playing against Doomsday?
Right.
It'd be pretty gross if he just goes Doomsday with Meddling Mage right now. I would actually just be blown away. as he's going to play this, and we'll see what he names. Names Dark Ritual.
Pretty safe choice.
Yeah, yeah.
Pretty safe choice.
You know, he could be thinking very simply that, you know, this is just a normal Storm deck, and, you know, maybe he's just got one top that he drew.
Right. Yeah, there's nothing really that's happened yet to make him think that something completely out of the ordinary is happening.
All right, so spin the top, put him back. White will take a draw step. Again, he's at 15. He has a Dark Ritual in his hand that he can't afford to cast, obviously, because of Meddling Mage. He's going to fire off a Duress, so that's probably going to go after the old Force of Will. He just drops his hand empty, says, all right, take my Force. Spell Pierce and Swords are what I've got. And he just passes the turn back, so he can't go off.
But Jacob has him on a 3-turn clock here, now 2-turn clock with a couple Pierces in his hand, so
really good draw.
not a bad setup.
Spins the top. Doomsday and Duress were among the cards that I saw there. So White's going to draw a card. He draws his Doomsday. Interesting. Has a Lotus Petal in his hand too, so he's going to cast a Lotus Petal. I wonder if he's going for it on this turn. Feels like yes.
Yeah, probably. Right. So 2 spells. And here's
Doomsday.
Doomsday.
And, wow, this is kind of insane, because I think what he was thinking is, I can beat the first Spell Pierce, but I'm not sure I can beat this. Like, he knows that he had 1 Spell Pierce,
yep.
but he didn't know about the second one, so he thought it was good to go on this Doomsday, which I think is the correct play to make. After checking your opponent's hand, seeing there's 1 Spell Pierce and pretty irrelevant source of Plowshares, you see Wilson's going to read Doomsday. You guys can take a look at it as well, and he's deciding if he wants to actually Spell Pierce this or just wait for what happens post-Doomsday.
Right.
Yeah. Which I, oddly enough, don't know which is correct. What you're supposed to fight over, actual Doomsday itself or, you know, the fireworks that come after Doomsday. It looks like he's going to just Spell Pierce here. White says, all right, pay it. Wilson says, how about another Spell Pierce that I just top decked? So Doomsday goes to the bin.
Jacob with some of that pretty fortuitous ponder there, finding Meddling Mage and another Spell Pierce.
Yeah. And follow up with the Stoneforge Mystic. Also the important thing here now is that Wilson actually knows what he's playing against.
Yep.
You know, he named Dark Ritual with Meddling Mage. I think the next game we probably see him named Doomsday.
I still think Dark Ritual is a reasonable name.
Okay. 1, 2, and 3, and he's going to pack it in. So Jacob Wilson does win game number 1 over Jonathan White. Blue, White, Red, Delver, the Grand Prix Washington, D.C. winning deck, up a game over Doomsday. As we're going to take a look at the sideboard here, and oh, this is going to be fun. Well, Jonathan White is going to be playing first. So Patrick,
well, actually,
break it down.
Actually, his sideboard's pretty straightforward here. So much of it is devoted to Burning Wish targets. He doesn't really have a lot of extra action to bring in. He can bring in 2 copies of Abrupt Decay and 2 copies of Massacre. Now, Massacre you can also leave as a Burning Wish target, but I'm sure it's specifically for beating Death and Taxes, but also very good against a white-based tempo deck with Meddling Mage in it. And then the rest of the side, you know, he can bring in additional Cabal Therapy if he wants to. He can main deck and empty the Warrens. So he has, you know, wish targets that he can add to his deck. But the cards that I'm pretty sure he's going to want in some number for sure are the Abrupt Decays and the Massacres.
Yeah. Taking a look at Wilson's sideboard here, 3 copies of Pyroblast, a Spell Snare, another Swords, a Wear and Tear, 2 copies of Rest in Peace, 3 Meddling Mage, Turning Nemesis, Grim Lavamancer, Grafdigger's Cage, and a Sword of Feast and Famine. The card that immediately jumped out to me was the 2 copies of Rest in Peace. I'm trying to think, can they win if there's a Rest in Peace to play the Doomsday player?
Doomsday doesn't need the graveyard to go off. They don't need the graveyard to go off.
Okay, so that won't matter very much. The 3 Meddling Mages are obviously going to come in. Swords are probably going to come out. Bolts probably are going to come out for him. The Spell Pierce is certainly going to come in. We saw how effective it was in game 1. Pyroblast, countering blue spells.
There's some cantrips.
It's just cantrips. Okay, so kind of marginal at best. Grafdigger's Cage, they don't need the graveyard, really, so I don't think that's going to have much impact. And then Wear and Tear. He's got tops. He's got LEDs,
Not
petals,
really.
so nothing really there. Okay. So it feels pretty straightforward then.
Yeah, probably best to just, you know, color inside the lines. Don't get too fancy.
Mm-hmm.
Your extra disruption, cutting your creature removal, the additional Meddling Mages. This is all good stuff, but I don't think he wants to go that deep. He probably also wants the Sword of Feast and Famine, I think, in place of one of his other pieces of equipment, as Feast and Famine feels to me like it could be good against Storm decks pressuring their hand because they're about building up a saturation of spells. This deck less so because it can go off through Doomsday with less of a setup, but he's still a conventional Storm deck in many respects. So keeping cards in hand is really critical.
And if you guys take a look at Jacob Wilson here, you see him shuffling up right now. You also see that Twitch shirt that he's wearing. We gave away 3 of those already this weekend. We've been giving away those in our premium giveaways again. We do appreciate Twitch giving us some shirts to give away during our premium giveaways this weekend. We'll be giving away 3 more during our elimination rounds here this evening. So if you guys want to get your hands on that and some free premium, you should definitely do that. And stick with us throughout our giveaways as we make our way through the elimination rounds and crown ourselves a champion. Again, thanks to Twitch and Ben Schwartz, who does work there, pulled some strings to be able to allow us to give some shirts away. Really awesome of them.
Yeah, Ben Schwartz recently became an employee over at Twitch TV. We obviously use Twitch quite a lot in our endeavor.
Yeah, it's like kind of important, I guess.
Kind of important. And I also am just a big fan of things that allow individuals to control their means of production and getting their own creative content out. Trying to find distribution channels and people to publish things is really challenging. So having a medium that allows individuals to create and promote their own content is really valuable, I think.
That website has had a huge impact on my life. I don't know if I'd be where I am right now without them. So it goes without saying how happy I am that Twitch TV does exist.
That said, if the Stoneblade Entertainment booth is next to the Twitch TV booth at PAX again next year, I would politely request that you turn the volume down on your booth. It was pretty loud. That's all. It's a small thing. It's a really small thing, but if you could.
Hey, man, where am I supposed to watch people speedrun Mega Man X4? I can't do that anywhere else.
Yeah, how am I supposed to do it anywhere else?
Yeah. That's important stuff for me.
All right. Jonathan mulligans and keeps 6.
Starts off with a ponder. Some little manipulation. And a very quick shuffle. Did not like what he saw at all. Wilson, a very tough opponent when he's playing these Delver strategies. Again, he's won a Grand Prix with this type of strategy. He's won a Standard Open with this type of strategy. He's very comfortable doing this.
There's something about getting on the board quickly and then backing up with blue spells that's very attractive to certain players.
Duress, Ponder, Massacre, Brainstorm, Scalding Tarn are the cards seen off of Gataxian Probe that Wilson is writing down right now.
So a pretty good hand for Jonathan. Not a lot of setup, but a lot of cantrips and some resistance in the form of Duress and Massacre. Jacob now with a Tundra and a Ponder.
And I don't know if you caught a glimpse of his hand, but 2 copies of Force of Will and a Meddling Mage are hiding out in there right now, too.
Yeah, I gotta say, whenever I'm thinking about brewing for Legacy, my brews always start with Gataxian Probe and Meddling Mage.
Yeah?
That's where I start.
I can dig it. I like Probe a lot, actually.
I think it is the most underplayed card in Legacy.
And it's really starting to infiltrate, though.
Yeah, people are starting to pick up, I think, but
I don't really know who started the movement, but the person I identify Probe with the most is Chris Piculo when he started playing it in Rug.
yeah, there's no way that's a fair card.
Yeah.
It's a free blue spell that lets you look at their hand and draws a card. There's no way that card's okay.
Shocking that the Meddling Mage wants to play with the Gataxian Probe.
Dude, it's a combo.
Yeah, it is. It is a combo. Here's a Brainstorm with a fetch land in play, so also a combo.
Quiet Speculation for 2 copies of Lingering Souls and a Cabal Therapy.
Game.
Or vice versa.
Yeah.
Game over.
Yep.
I have a lot of deck lists in my notepads that start out with something along these lines.
Sure. I'm still waiting for someone to crack the Young Pyromancer Quiet Speculation. I think that can be
for like Acorn Harvests.
You young Pyromancer, Acorn Harvest, really? You young Pyromancer. When you cast Quiet Spec, you get a guy, and you can chain off therapies.
Oh yeah.
Because you flashback therapy, you get a guy. Flashback therapy, you get a guy, and you can just nuke their hand.
Hootle.
Yeah, that isn't that a delight?
That's delightful.
That sounds like a lot of fun. I'm waiting for someone to do that. Or they could go get Acorn Harvest and
right.
Crows and Reclamation, and some other terrible card that has flashback. Grizzly Fate. How's that sound?
Beast Attack.
Absolutely.
So, Jonathan, done with this brainstorm here. We'll see what Jacob wants to do with this Meddling Mage. He's working with a little less information now that Jonathan's just brainstormed. But there's a lot of cards he can safely name.
Yeah, Massacre will be the name. So Wilson's got some big plans. See a Daze in his hand. They might have 3 Force of Wills. I know he's got 2. He's got 3. Boy. This is going to be a tough road ahead for Jonathan White, I tell you.
Well, I mean, yes and no. Obviously, Jacob's hand's very good, but Jonathan does have some duressing action, and he's not under a ton of pressure, so he does have time to assemble a hand.
Well, he's going to take a look. Here's duress. Jacob Wilson's going to confidently show a hand of 3 Force Wills, 2 Brainstorms, and a Daze.
Confident enough that he just puts it over the top of the duress.
Yeah, yeah. What do you do? You just take a Force? Okay, I was wondering what you take there with the duress, because all of those cards are good.
Yeah, I mean, taking the... that might imply that he no longer has Cabal Therapy in his deck, as there's some upside in choking Jacob on Force of Wills and then trying to slam them with Cabal Therapy, but he does have to kind of get through these at some point anyway, so that Divining Top is good enough for Jacob to Force of Will as well.
Yeah, I think that's worth it.
Yeah.
You see the hand of Ponder, Doomsday, and Massacre that he can't cast.
With that fetch land, that Divining Top represents so much selection. I like using the Force of Will there.
Well, sacrifice right now. Search out a basic. So he's just got to, right now, what White needs to do is kind of what we saw Nelson do in his last match, is just power through these counter spells.
Yep.
That's all he really can do, so he's going to cast a Ponder to get a little bit deeper in his deck.
So Jonathan just now looking at a hand of Doomsday and Massacre. The Massacre uncastable because of the Meddling Mage. And that is it for Jonathan.
Wilson draws his card for always brainstorming first. Excuse me. So Tundra, one of their cards, puts a couple cards back here. And with the Mage, gotta put White down to 16. Yeah, as you mentioned, if there's any positive here, it's that White's not really underneath a lot of pressure. Inside Diamond the draw.
Jacob has 2 bolts on top of his deck, so the clock is a little bit shorter than Jonathan might imagine.
Mm-hmm. It's really funny, like the Rug Delver decks or the Blue-Red Delver decks, they leave in bolts in this matchup because it's basically a Lava Spike, but it does oftentimes cut a full turn off.
Yeah, and additionally, you know, as you see Jacob brainstorming here, the Delver decks often have, you know, they have Swords of Plowshares in some of these lists. They have cards that are actually worse than these bolts.
Mm-hmm.
True Name Nemesis is pretty inefficient.
And for 2 more, going to put White down to 12. 2 bolts go back on top. A handful of permission here. Cabal Therapy is not a bad draw.
Yeah, it's given how much permission, you know, Jonathan is aware that he's possibly slogging through that therapy is a really big draw.
Just passes the turn back, though, trying to pick a better spot. Wilson immediately just draws Lightning Bolt, attacks for 2, puts White down to 10, pass it back. Nothing's really changed, no reason for him to move. Doomsday the draw here. Not quite sure if he can even cast Doomsday at this point.
Well, he doesn't have triple black right
yeah,
now.
I don't know if he has Dark Rate in his hand, and LED's not going to allow him to do that. So he said, all right, I'm going to start off with a Cabal Therapy. Jacob asks, how many cards do you have in your hand? 6-ish?
5, I think, yeah,
5
a
or
lot.
6. I'll give him a little cause for concern.
So Jacob mulling over how he wants to respond to this. He has a couple different paths, as I believe he has a Brainstorm in his hand. He can either Force of Will to Therapy, he can Brainstorm response and try to protect something. But I would be surprised if he just let this resolve with no response, as Jonathan's almost certainly naming Force of Will, and Jacob has 2 in his hand. It's a big therapy here from Jonathan.
Yeah, I really wonder what Wilson's going to do here, because he's got a Brainstorm in his hand. And okay, so he's going to force, he's going to remove the Taxium Probe. I didn't know if he was going to maybe Brainstorm and hide some stuff or not.
Well, I think he still wants to keep a Force of Will in his hand, because there's a chance he just dies.
In for 2.
And now Jonathan, This is a really good setup from Jacob as well. Jonathan's unaware of the fact that he's actually going to die next turn. The lightning bolt, the 2 lightning bolts in hand plus the meddling mage attack is lethal. Jonathan might be under the impression that he has more time than he actually does.
Yep.
As his idea is unbound.
It's kind of an interesting card at this point. Wilson really thinking, do I care about this? Is that fine? The answer is that is fine. 1, 2, and 3.
Yeah, the bottleneck that Jonathan has at this point is mana, so Jacob's not willing to fight over that. He has plenty of cards, he's just missing mana, so Jonathan spending 2 of his mana to cast Ideas Unbound is probably a good thing for Jacob.
So now he's going to start by casting a Ponder before the discard 3 trigger happens at end of turn. Take a look at those 3. Feels like we might have a shuffle coming.
Yeah, I mean, I would imagine at this point Jonathan needs a Dark Ritual to kickstart his hand after he spends so much mana cantripping.
Brainstorm that he can't cast. I think he just says, I have to discard. I think we got a bolt coming. Yeah, the Ideas Unbound trigger is going to happen now. And the interesting thing about this card is what happens to the Ideas Unbound trigger is that when you get to the end of your turn, you have to the trigger goes on the stack, but then players can, like, priority and stuff still happens.
Sure.
Yeah. So here's the discard 3, and now here's the bolt. So let's put you down to 5. Quick untap here from Wilson. I think you might have this one down to 3. Let's make it 0.
Yep.
That is it. Jacob Wilson does defeat Jonathan White 2-0. Blue, white, red Delver, you're 5-0, my friend. Doomsday picks up its first loss. And Jacob Wilson's off to another beautiful start here. He also got off to a great start yesterday, too.
Yep.
Kind of lost a couple at the back in there. I think he ended up going X and 2 throughout the 10 rounds.